Are you seeing a hunger in today's day with women at your events who these women want the Holy Spirit?
Yes, I think things have gotten so sideways.
Okay.
That people are like, the t-shirt is not going to fix it. Manna and manifestations will always leave you hungry for something more. You need to pursue my presence. He said, if you are not hungry for my presence, if you are not hungry for my word, it's because you filled yourself with other things.
What's it going to take for us to wake up?
The enemy knows if I want to hurt the woman, I go after her children. We're not pushing a generation into the presence of God. We're pushing them to the presence of fools.
There is hope.
There is hope. And this is the answer, because so many people are like, what do we do?
Hey everybody, this is Rita Springer. Welcome to the Rita Springer podcast, and worship is my weapon. Today I have a pretty dear old friend,
ever since the fire tunnel.
As an old, but I think we've known each other for
a good 20 years. Yeah. Maybe longer.
Only really see each other at conferences where you're the speaker, I'm the worship leader. I think that's where we met, right?
Yeah, it was in Hershey, Pennsylvania.
At the Penn State, Delaware.
I just remember feeling so guilty. It was the prayer line that never ended. And you just had to keep singing and singing. And I hadn't met you yet. And I came up to you afterwards. I'm like, I'm so sorry.
You were praying for everybody and their dog and cat.
I did not necessarily want to do that, but that is exactly what happened. Yes.
All right, now, do you find those days, because that day, like back in that day, you were there you could be there for hours doing stuff. I don't find that much anymore. Do you see that much anymore?
Not really. I do wonder how much of that became the focus, and the word wasn't preached, and it was a moment.
Yeah.
And so I think there was that switch to now, hey, let's preach the word. But now I feel like we have more performers and less vessels. Yeah. And so now I feel like we need to kind of go back to maybe just a little bit more balance with it.
Yeah, I do remember like those kind of events with some of you speakers. I think weren't we there with Durso? Was that the Durso one? She must have been another year.
I've never gotten to minister with Maria, but I'm going to next weekend.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
That's where I met her at the Penn State one year. And I was always fascinated because I hadn't been connected with you guys as speakers before. And those are pretty big events. So I think that's
like
why I met the likes of
women.
Like the Christine Caines and Lisa Bevere's, and I met Maria there, and then I knew Harper from someplace else, but now she's kind of in those events. So those events were always like, there was something special about altar time that I just loved. I miss those times. I mean, I still kind of miss a good fire tunnel anyway.
Yeah, I mean, a good one.
A good one. Not a weird one, a good one.
Yes. It's always a little bit of a crapshoot. Like you're not sure whether that's going to be a good or a bad. Right. I do feel that we need to honor God's presence and His Spirit more and have more of a sensitivity that, hey, maybe God wants to say something, not just through what you're preaching, but maybe there are people present that are hurting. And I have actually seen a lot more response, not necessarily fire tunnels, but a lot more response in my meetings where I've said, hey, I'm going to put something on you right now. I'm going to ask you to take an action. Yeah. Rita, I feel like during the pandemic, there were 2 epidemics released. There was COVID, and there was cowardice. Wow. And I feel like so many people lost their voice, buried their dreams, buried their talents, froze. Wow. Just froze. And I have said to them, hey, you're going to have to get back your voice. You're going to have to stop criticizing and begin to prophesy. You're going to have to actually move from a place of frozen fear to a place of courageous, maybe even making a mistake, but stepping forward and stepping out in everything that God has, because there was a plan pre-COVID. Yeah. And God didn't change His mind. He didn't say, wait a minute, do we have a lockdown? I am so sorry. Did I tell you that I wanted you to do this? But so many people allowed it to push a pause button on obedience. Now, I allowed it to push a pause button on performance. I remember in 2019, and again, this is mother of 4 boys. I still had 3 living at home at the time.
Yeah.
And I was in the shower and I remember God saying to me, when you stand before me, I'm not going to ask you if you went to all the conferences you were invited to.
Yikes, yeah.
I'm going to ask you what you did with my entrustment on your life.
Right.
And I remember, when the Holy Spirit's talking, you're answering in your head. And I said, they only give me 35 minutes. And he said, when did that become yours? When did that become yours, Lisa? And I realized that I actually had more control over that 35 minutes than the Holy Spirit. And, there's certain things that I have seen the faithfulness of God in my life, whether it's praying for people that need to get pregnant or praying for people that are really shamed and trapped. And this is going to sound crazy, but are experiencing either sexual transmitted diseases, or now they call it sexually transmitted infections. I don't know if you know that they keep making it nicer sounding, like you can just wash it off maybe. Just praying for people for those kind of healings and seeing God touch lives. It's been beautiful.
I thought about this a couple of days ago when I was talking about the era of conference. There was there was an era that I came in with the worship, and I don't know what it's like on the flip side. I go to events now and speak as well, but I've never been just on the speaker side. You're on the speaker side. It's not like
nobody
you
has
slide
ever
over
asked me
and
to sing. Never
grab a
never been
piano or
piano.
grab a guitar.
Nope, they do not.
And so from your perspective, it's like I don't know the dynamic of how you view that. Sometimes I'm playing musical chairs, and so we're kind of setting up the atmosphere for you guys to come up and do this. And I was in a conversation the other day about just an era, kind of the late 90s, early 2000s, where it was just conference. And people stood in lines to get the words. And it was almost as if they went to conference for the words. And I was always
they were giving out words.
Yeah, like prophetic words or
yeah.
a word for their life or whatever.
Yeah.
So they'd rush to the conference to get into the prayer, into the fire tunnel, whatever it was. And there was almost like what I was seeing was like people were so hungry for the moment, but they weren't really grabbing a hold of the lifetime thing that they could grab from that talk, or they could grab from that altar time and then walk it out and endure with it and progress with it and go from glory to glory to glory with it. And I don't know, recently I was like, man, Lord, when will we come back into a place where we're not, like women do this a lot, where they kind of go from conference top to conference top to conference top to get the next greatest book or the t-shirt or the sweatshirt. Are you seeing a hunger in today's day with women at your events who these women want the Holy Spirit. These women want the Lord. Yes. They want to change. Hey, everybody, I want to take a minute to talk to those of you and encourage those of you who maybe you're planting a church, you're on staff at a church, you're in the children's department of a church, and you run and oversee the curriculum at your kids' division of church. There is some friends of mine that have developed this curriculum that I just think it's the best curriculum for kids' church out there. It's called Amazing Kids. It is a Bible-based, spirit-filled curriculum. I know these guys, they are incredible creatives. Connie and Tyler Bates are the genius behind this, and they just love serving kids and serving God in serving our kids. If this is something that your church is looking for, if it's something that you as a pastor of your children's department is looking for, an enriched Bible-based curriculum to bring to your children's department of your church or your church plant, this is something that I would highly recommend that you do. I fully believe and back what these guys do. My own kid was under it for years, and it's just the way that they're doing it right now is just beautiful. So you can find all that information if you go to amazing.kids, and there's a kind of a special discount code that you can get, or a promotional code that you can get if you type in Rita in the promotional area of that, and they'll give you special pricing on that. But it's something that I just highly recommend. And kids are so important. They're so important in our churches. What we do when we drop our kids off in church and what's happening in the Sunday school area is so important for your children. And this curriculum is one of the best, and you will love it for your church. So check that out. It's incredible, and I back it 100%.
Yes, I think things have gotten so sideways.
Okay.
That people are like, the T-shirt is not going to fix this.
Okay. All right. That's great hope for me.
Yeah. Okay. So going back to that time period that you're describing.
Yeah.
I remember I was having babies. And so everybody was having moments, they were laughing, they were falling down, they were taking laps, and I'm having babies. And I remember thinking, I'm so exhausted. I'm so tired. I kept crying out to God, what's wrong with me? Like, maybe I need to go get a word. Maybe there's like something hanging over my head and somebody can say, this is the thing. Yeah. And then I'll be free. And I got to the place where I was so discontent with my limitations, I guess I would say, my fears, that I dragged John to some meeting. And it was in the moment where if you were in the Spirit, you would laugh hysterically. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh,
and so I dragged
that.
John to a meeting, and he did not want to go. He was like, I don't know how I feel about this. And I was like, I don't even care how you feel about this. I need to be refreshed. And I sat there through the whole service and got nothing. And I got up the next morning and I was like, I went there.
Yeah.
I wanted it. And God said to me, manna and manifestations will always leave you hungry for something more. Mm-hmm. He said, Lisa, I'm not going to let you be content with a manifestation. Yeah. You need to pursue my presence. And I said, I want to be hungry for you. And he said, I am not responsible for your hunger. He said, if you are not hungry for my presence, if you are not hungry for my word, it's because you filled yourself with other things. And he said, in America, where there is an abundance of distractions and things, you must fast. And I do feel that we need a generation that is saying, you know what? I need to hit my knees. I need to drop the rocks. I need to pursue the presence of God. Yeah. And what is my compliance with darkness? Or, even when I wrote the Fight for Female book, I have a chapter in there on spiritual warfare, but I did not realize how much that would be what would resonate.
Wow.
I kind of thought, okay, well, obviously we don't wrestle with flesh and blood.
Right.
But so this is the first book I've ever had where they send it to a sensitivity reader. And the sensitivity,
what?
I know. So the sensitivity readers, when I actually quoted Ephesians, we do not wrestle with flesh and blood, but with principalities. And I actually wrote underneath it, if you can see them, they're not your problem. If they're people, they're not your problem. You're not wrestling with flesh and blood. They said I was inciting violence. No. But I'm saying these are Christian sensitivity readers. This is how far we've gone off. Everybody's triggered. Everybody's been traumatized. Everybody's wounded. Everybody's a victim. And they've all bought into the narrative. Do I think there's a lot of trauma? Yes. Do I understand?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But they've all bought into the narrative that they are victims, and they have forgotten that the enemy sees them as warriors. And so he is dumbing down a generation who he knows is a threat. And he is saying, oh no, get mad at your parents. Oh no, remember that one time you didn't get this, or the person said that, or you were here. And at the end of the day, we can either live with the list of our trauma. I was talking to somebody who I love, and I don't know who he was talking to, but he said, I was talking to a doctor or a therapist or something who said trauma goes back 14 generations. And I said, well, I'm so glad the blood of Jesus goes forward 1,000.
Oh my God.
So we have to decide, are we going forward? Are we going back?
But how I think the frustration too, because even kind of like one of the first things that I popped here was when you say that this book was the most difficult you'd ever written.
Ever.
And you talked about how exhausted you were. And you said, I found myself pulled between anger and heartbreak, writing on identity, which I think, Lisa, I think it's one thing I appreciate you so much, because when someone carries a lingo or a language that you're like, I recognize that language, it's almost emotionally and spiritually just refreshing to be like, I'm not crazy.
Affirming.
I'm not crazy.
I'm not alone.
And I've always felt like that about you because there's, this warrior thing that you have, which every woman I think wants to feel like they got their moxie and they're a warrior or a lioness. We all want to feel that. But this feels like something's wrong. And identity is the thing in COVID that I was watching it come after my kid. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, this isn't a cold. This isn't just an illness. This is an all in all outrage attack on the identity of our young people. Yeah. Because it just sucked them into isolation and sucked them into it, thinking about themselves.
And stripped them of purpose.
It's insanity. Yeah. And you kind of go after identity in this book. You even talk about it. The way that you put it is divine identity.
Yes.
Can you somehow break that down? Because what you're talking about, what's frustrating in me is like, what's it going to take for us to wake up? Not just wake up as women.
Right.
But wake up as
a church.
That's what's exhausting.
As children of God.
Yes.
As children of God. Well, okay. So for me, my journey on discovering what identity was actually began when I had one son. And back then it was cool if you were a Christian. I think we're looking like 1987, 1988. We're looking at a prayer time where I would have prayed, God, use me. God, use me to glorify your name. God, use me to, make Jesus known. Use me to heal the sick. And everybody prayed that way. And that's what was modeled for me. I was a brand new Christian, maybe been saved for like 5 years. And in my prayer time, I heard the Holy Spirit say, have you ever been used by a friend? And I just paused and I thought, yeah, I have. He said, how did you feel about that? I said, I felt betrayed. He said, were you ever used by a boyfriend? I said, I thought you didn't remember those things. Yeah. And he was like, how did you feel? I said, I felt foolish. I felt shamed. And God said, I don't use people. I heal them. I transform them. I conform them to my image. He said, who you are to me is daughter. That's who you are to me. Yeah. And he said, Satan uses people for a season and then tosses them. And he said, so many ministers that you see falling right now, they only let me use them. Like, God, use me to preach. Use me to do this. Use me to build the church. He said, they didn't want to know me. They didn't want to know me. He said, you have to pursue the knowledge of me. You want to be known by me. And the truth is, as I pursue him, he reveals me. So like, it's this moment where I pursue, I know you've had similar experiences when you're in the presence of God and maybe you have a whole list of things that you're carrying, you're worried about, and you get in the presence of God and his awesomeness overwhelms you to the place where you're like, I'm just going to revel in the wonder of who you are. This is all small. This is taken care of. And too many people, they make it about a transactional rather than a presence or a transformational relationship. And so for me, my identity was sealed right then. Whether I ever was in the ministry, I was loved by God. I was his daughter.
And do you feel like that sets you up?
It set me up to win. Whereas I think other people, like, because, what would they say? Lord, we prophesied in your name. Right, hey, God, we did all these things. We let you use our life. And we used your name to build our own whatever. And he says, depart, I didn't know you. There was not a knowing. And he said, you need to know me. And, then again, I am very relational with the people I have relationship with. Yeah. And that, that doesn't mean you can have that kind of relationship with everybody, but who I am, very loyal to them, very relational with them. So I remember when I was writing Without Rival, I had 2 beautiful grandkids. I'd just come out from North Korea and I fell asleep at the laptop when I was writing Girls with Swords. And I woke up 8 pages later to the letter T. And I was like, I need to lay down. And I'm falling asleep. And I think God likes to shock me when he tells me things. And I'm falling asleep and I hear, I do not love my children equally. I was like, what? Did I bring home a blasphemy spirit from God? You have to love us all the same. Yeah. And he said, same means one of you are replaceable. He said, equal implies my love can be measured. He said, I don't have love for my children. I am love for my children. And he said, I don't love my children equally. I love them uniquely. And I was like, what? And so I jumped out of bed and I looked up the word unique, and it means without rival. And so that was that moment where I was like, okay, I'm going to preach that we have a God who has no rival. He has no equal. And that means we, his children, have no rival. We have no equal. And so many people, even in the Christian world, they think Satan is here and God is here, but God is here and Michael and Satan are here. God has no one that is face to face, toe to toe with him. And so, when he did that, he said, you are not what you do. Your identity is not single or married. Your identity is not minister or author. Your identity is not mother. Your identity is not grandmother. These are all roles. And we have mixed roles and performance into identity, but identity is something that can never be taken away from you. Now we have a cultural, one more layer of my sexuality is my identity.
Yeah.
My
and
it's
feels
broken.
like it's on top right now.
Oh, it's totally on top. Where it's God made a mistake. He was happenstance. He was careless with my weaving. He wove me with a woman's body, but I have a man's soul, and I am. And so what is the enemy is not stupid. Yeah. He understands houses divided fall. How much more when your soul and your body are divided? And if you believe you can't trust God with your formation, how are you going to trust him with your transformation? If we cannot believe him to be good in our mother's womb, how can we believe that he can actually satisfy our deepest longings and our greatest needs for intimacy and connection? And yet right now they're saying people are having more virtual sex and far less actual sex. And they don't even know how to connect intimately with people anymore.
I mean, our young generation. Yeah. That I want to ask you a question about that kind of stuff, because this is something I process a lot. But when I'm talking to creatives a lot, I talk about the first 5 days. The first 5 days, in the beginning, God created. And in the first 5 days, nothing in the first 5 days has ever deviated from the plan. It's always stayed right on track. It's always done what it's supposed to do. A cow doesn't wander around a field and say, wish I were a pig. I identify as a pig, because it wasn't given the choice to ever be anything else but a cow. An oak tree was never given the choice to be a rose bush. Right. And so those first 5 days, we don't have any issues with anything unless God says, well, I've commanded a raven to feed you. That would be anything outside the ordinary that he would do to something that had already been commanded to do something differently. So day 6 is given something that day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 isn't given. It's given choice. Mm-hmm. If choice is holy, I mean, it would have to be holy if it's something that God actually reserved and gave to us and said, hey, don't touch the tree. I mean, I always think it would have been so much different if we were just part of day 5 and then we had no choice and we just lived. But there's something about choice that God gave us that has to be holy, or he wouldn't have given it to us. Mm-hmm. What in your understanding with identity, if in our choices we're breaking our identity into pieces because of all of the stuff that's coming around, what is it about choice that gives us all the stability and all of the right and all of the holy relation that people are missing? Does that make sense? It's like he wanted communion with day 6.
I feel like I'm hearing you saying choice was a privilege. It
was a privilege.
But we've misused it.
I mean, it's the first thing that happens, right? Mm-hmm. Is choice is misused. It's the first thing sin comes in. Mm-hmm. I keep looking back on that thing and thinking, what is it about choice that is so special to the Lord? Mm-hmm. That when we choose him and we get him in there and we let him, we act like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with the holiness of choice, and outside the command of never being anything other than. Yes, like there's something supernatural in that I've always kind of wrestled with. That's caused me to keep pushing toward the right choice, because I'm trying to engage with that thing in the garden, that he first had that was like, everything will be great if you just do this.
But he never ate from the tree of life, which he could have.
No.
Yeah. He never chose life. He chose the knowledge of good and evil, which is inferior to the knowledge of God. I mean, he already had the knowledge of God. So, Satan or the serpent comes to the woman and Adam's standing there, but comes and says to them, God knows that if you eat this, you're going to be like him.
Yes.
And you'll know good from evil. Well, they'd only known good.
Right.
They'd only known God. And so what did they do? They grasped at equality with God. They wanted to be like apart from him. And it's interesting because Philippians says that Jesus did not grasp at equality with God.
Okay, yeah.
But what did he do? He set aside his divine form. He emptied himself of his divine privileges and took on flesh and became a slave or a servant to humanity. And what's so interesting is I was talking to somebody, I can't remember if I told you this or not. I wrote about it in the book. I was talking to a beautiful, young, amazing entrepreneurial woman.
Yeah.
New Christian and very wealthy. And she said, what if you and I are sitting here, what if Jesus was here and my friend who believes she's born in the wrong body is sitting here? What would he say to her? And I thought, okay, this is an important question. And how I answer it is also going to be very important.
Yeah.
And I said, well, first, he would tell her he loved her. First and foremost.
Yeah.
First and foremost. Second, he would say, you're not a mistake. And I said, third, he would say, I understand. And she was like, and it's not because he's ever been transgender.
Yeah.
I said, but he was the Son of God. And he put on flesh. So if anybody understands the uncomfortableness, the limitations, the temptations, the frustration, the angst of humanity, Jesus does. And I said, he didn't just get us, he became us so we could become him. And we have this promise of Hebrews 4 that we do not have a high priest who is removed, but one who is compassionate. He understands, but he's not going to say, yes, do your own thing. He's always, I don't condemn you, go and sin no more. We kind of just forget the go and sin no more part and just do the I do not condemn, or we do only the go and sin no more and I do not condemn. So we also forget, Rita, that we long for more because we are created for more.
Right.
But we mistake it for more money, more success, more more accolades of people, more whatever the more is in your life. And the more that you and I long for is eternity. Is eternity. And I'm a seed. Right now, I've got a jungle in my backyard. I've never really grown things here in Tennessee. And I planted way too many tomato plants for my raised garden bed. I can't even walk through. I mean, there's two, you can't walk through. I mean, it's like, they're like this tall and it's aggressive. And if you open up a tomato, you see a seed that is colorless and shapeless. You could be like, I don't know if that's a green pepper seed, a green bell pepper, or maybe, they all kind of look the same.
Yeah.
Until you put them in the ground.
Yeah.
And when you put it in the ground, that tomato plant grows into something vibrant green and red. So seeds are nothing more than contained potential that has to go into the ground and die. And you and I both know that anything God does in our life usually goes into the ground and dies.
Yep.
And then it comes up.
Yep.
As long as we are holding on, he's like, put it into the soil. Put it into the soil, Lisa. And it's got to be an Isaac. It can't be an Ishmael.
Yeah.
Put it in the soil. And there's that moment where we forget that our bodies are seeds. And who I really am comes up in eternity. And, I'm looking at my 64-year-old body every once in a while, and I'm like, that is a betrayal. I'll go to bed with normal arms, and I wake up, I'm like, where the heck did that crepey skin come from? Like, do I have a bat wing now? What happened? And it's because outwardly, I'm actually shedding so the inward can be renewed. Yeah. And it's not that it's going to necessarily be renewed here, but renewed there. And so we are not preaching what Jesus preached. Jesus preached, hey, there is another life. It's your actual real life.
Yeah.
And what we're doing is saying, grab it all now. God wants you happy. God wants you, if you think you're a wrong gender, change it. And yet I'm reading and I'm seeing so many testimonies of beautiful, young, courageous people who transitioned.
Yeah.
And then met Jesus in a profound way with his love.
Yeah.
And they're like, can I just stay this way? And he's like, no.
Yeah.
No, it's not truthful.
Hey, everybody, this is Rita Springer. Thank you so much for coming in and joining me on the podcast here with Worship is My Weapon. There's a lot of things I'm doing right now. And one of the things that we provide alongside this podcast is a newsletter that we do that we send out to those of you that are subscribed, where I just answer questions and kind of give you information. And sometimes you guys are able to write in with questions that you just are curious about. We love that. We love that interaction. I actually love to interact with those of you that want something a little bit more beyond the podcast. So if that's you, make sure to get our newsletter, sign up for our newsletter, subscribe to the newsletter, and stay in touch with all the things that we're doing here on the podcast in that newsletter. Why is, in your take on this, why is this such a prevalent thing right now?
Well, I believe it's an attack of the enemy. I believe that the enemy works overtime to do two things.
Okay.
He wants to undermine the image of God.
Okay.
He hates anyone, everyone, male and female, because they're created in the image of God. And he also hates the sanctity of life. And so if he can actually tell a whole generation their mistake, they will turn on God. They will say, oh, I can't trust you. He also, so many of them, Rita, may never have children.
Right.
And what does the Bible say about your children?
Yeah.
They're like arrows in the hand of a warrior.
Yeah.
See, the enemy hates that we reproduce. And I'm not saying that, it's all about, saved through childbearing. That was speaking to the idea that they would go to the temple and feel like they had to be there. So I don't believe women are saved by the number of children they give birth to.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is children are God's heritage.
Yeah.
And that's a entrustment that he gives to women. And then we've got men acting like women right now, and women are okay with it. Men presenting, drag queens presenting, right. And the women are like, oh, you're so beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? Female is my divine entrustment. I always think of when this is going on, I'm thinking about Esau, how he sold his birthright for lentils. He was hungry in a moment. And I don't know if there's a generation right now of women who want to be hungry in a moment. I don't want to have pushback. They're forgetting that what is lentils now to them is going to be lost to their daughters and their granddaughters. I mean, even with, and I know people will contend maybe this, but even with the Olympics, with the boxers that had the presence of Y, anytime there's any Y, even if you're XX with some Y, you are always going to have a physical advantage over just an XX.
Right.
And so what I was so concerned about is when you open the door to an XXY, you open a floodgate to an XY. Do you know, we both live here in Christian conservative world, and I am in the Nashville airport waiting for John to land. We're on a 45-minute difference, and people are just going to pick up us both. And I'm standing, near those glass doors where we exit, and I see a man walk right into the women's bathroom. And I follow him in there. And I thought, he walks past the sinks. He turns to the stalls. And I said, excuse me, you're in the women's bathroom. And he just jumps a mile, and he turns and looks at me. He said, I thought this was the baggage claim. I said, oh, you thought the luggage was coming out of the toilet? I said, you need to come with me right now. And I walked him out.
Oh my gosh.
I got home and I told my boys like, Mom, you're not big. You're not, like, we need to tell you something. We know you think you're big. You're not big.
Yeah.
I said, I felt big. And it wasn't even, like, I don't even know if anybody was in there.
Yeah.
But the truth is, I saw it. And what if I'd had a granddaughter? Or maybe what if somebody else's daughter was in there? Right. What if people are just testing their limits? And I'm not afraid that somebody's going to say I'm hateful when I say a 55-year-old man cannot identify as a 15-year-old girl swimmer and compete and change clothes in front of my daughters. That happened in Canada. If I was one of those moms, I would have pulled all the girls and he's swimming by himself. He's going to the handicap bathroom. He's not disrobing, but they protected him with a police escort. What has happened? This is the hatred towards women. This is the Satan, and women are partnering with it.
Okay, so this is where there's part of me, Lisa, that some of this stuff just makes me speechless because it's almost I don't have a grid. There's a grid in me that's like, I mean,
You're like, surely this isn't happening.
I mean,
yeah.
I've seen it. But it's almost like trying to verbally process out loud what seems so crazy that people are actually acting like this. I think that's where my there's an intolerance in there, but it's almost like an unbelief. Because I was at a conference last weekend, and wasn't a women's conference, but there were women in the room, and I was speaking on Genesis chapter 3, where the enemy has come to Eve and said what he said to Eve. God shows up after that, and before God deals with the punishment, he looks toward the devil, or looks toward the serpent, and he says, I'm going to put enmity between you and her, which
was actually a gift, believe it or not.
Was a gift.
Yeah.
It was the best gift. And I say, because it's in the Bible, I said, do you know what that means? I'm like, ladies, do you know that enmity means to make an enemy of? So essentially what
it means irreconcilable hostility.
Yes.
They were never friends, and they will never be friends.
And they will never be friends.
It's not just an enemy. It's
like
it's worse.
The worst of the worst.
It's forever.
And I said, that means that in that moment, God gives women back an authority by basically saying, she has now just become your worst nightmare. And there were gasps from women all over the room. And I realized they've never read this.
Well, I had an interesting experience, same thing last weekend. I said, when God put enmity between the woman and the serpent, whose side did God put the woman on? And they all just looked at me.
Lisa.
I know. And I said, okay, let me help you. The serpent is bad. God is good. There's nothing in the middle. Whose side?
Yeah.
And they were almost just like a whisper. I mean, they were scared to say it. I said, do you understand that God overshadowed a virgin? Do you understand that the Holy Spirit, that Jesus had 24 chromosomes instead of 48? Do you understand? It says through one man's sin, transgression, one man's obedience. I said, Jesus was the obedient. Adam was the disobedient.
Yeah.
Yes, Eve, she messed up, but she was deceived. The man knew what he was doing. And I said, when God, and I don't know if you've ever studied this, I think maybe we've talked about this. When God says, all right, here's what's going down. He says, now lest the man put forth his hand and also eat from the tree of life. He says, he kicks the man out. Like when you read Genesis, it doesn't say he and she. It doesn't say now lest she. And there's that prophetic word that your desire is going to be for your husband. You're going to leave with him and he's going to rule over you.
Yeah.
Let me just tell you what's going to happen. And when you read in the Midrash and some other different Hebrew writings, it actually paints the story that Eve chose to leave.
Wow.
And I mean, read it again.
Yeah.
Without any, because we tend to read what we believe instead of believe what we read. Read it again without those blinders. So now we have a woman and a serpent. And now in book of Revelation, we've got Revelation 12, verse 17, a dragon and a woman.
Yeah.
And we know that woman was at one time collectively Israel, specifically Mary. But now that is not talking about Mary, because it says the dragon became furious with the woman and went to make war against her children. And it said, those who keep the commandments of God and hold to the testimony of Jesus. So that's not Israel. That's the church.
Yeah.
And so you come after Rita, that's one thing. You come after your son, that's another thing. You come after me, that's one thing. You come after my children, grandchildren, that's another thing.
Yeah.
And so the enemy knows if I want to hurt the woman, I go after her children. And so what is he doing? He's out there in the highways and the byways. They're called the internet. And he's saying, look, you're not enough. You'd be loved. You'd be safe if you would change this, if you would do that. Don't listen to your parents. Your parents are evil. Your parents are toxic. They'll create trauma in your life. They don't believe the best in you. Listen to Taylor Swift. Listen to what? We're not pushing a generation into the presence of God. We're pushing them to the presence of fools.
Yeah.
Let's just be honest with you, of an agenda, of a Marxist world. I don't know if you saw my little escapade with my t-shirt.
I was going to ask you about that because I was watching your thing yesterday and I was thinking, you have got to be kidding me.
No, it's absolutely crazy. So, I wore a t-shirt to highbrow and it said the future is male and female. I kind of forgot that I was in a bubble. The men were like, thank you for including us in the future. I'm like, you're welcome. Women were like, I need that t-shirt. And so I thought everybody's happy with this. So I take a selfie and I just wrote, the future is male and female, because without male and female, there is no future. That's your parents, basically. And, I post it, I get in my car, I drive home, boom. I mean, first thing was, you are co-signing with patriarchy. This is white patriarchy. This is, Jesus would never co-sign with this. This is coding like all lives matter. I'm like, wait, how did we even get racial out of this? I'm like, my brain, insanity. You're a bigot. You're a demon of hate. You're anti-LGBTQ. You're a transphobe. Men are always included. It's our turn. I mean, Christian women, just 922 comments.
Insanity.
People just like blowing up. So what do? I just thought, okay, there's something spiritual behind this. So I just go to my laptop and I type into Google, what is the origin of the quote, the future is female? And a Washington Post article comes up from, I think, 2015. My book has it accurate. And it was talking about how Hillary Clinton had brought it into her campaign. And so they were exploring the origins. And the origin was a 1975 lesbian separatist group called Labris. And you think, what's Labris? Well, I decided to look it up. It's a two-headed axe carried by Amazons and the Greeks and Roman goddesses. And they believed that lesbians should live completely separate from men and for a time period heterosexuals. And so they had set up this whole presentation called What a Well-Dressed Dyke Would Wear. And I have the photos from it. And the t-shirt that said the future is female was part of that presentation, which was crazy because the woman wearing it looked like a guy. I was like, is this a guy wearing it? I was like, it's you hate insanity, men, but you're trying to look like one. Yes. I don't even understand it. So they said the quote, the future is female, was a call to war, an invocation, and a spell to cast. They said that in the Washington Post article. And 25% of the proceeds, not profits, go to Planned Parenthood. So now we've got a blood sacrifice. We have Greek and Roman goddesses. We have a spell to cast. We have a call to war. And
all
everybody
under the name female.
Yeah, the future's
Insane.
female. Yeah. I was like, what is going on here? So then I did a deep dive into the origins of feminism.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you know anything about that?
I mean, no, not outside of I Am Woman, Hear Me Roar.
Yeah. Well, so apparently the mother of feminist thought is a woman named Mary Wollstonecraft. Mary Wollstonecraft ran out. She was from the UK. She ran to France. She was part of beheading all the people. She was super excited about the French Revolution. But they started to turn in on themselves. Like they killed Robespierre, who was like the major person. And they were going to kill her, but she lied and said she was married to an American. She escaped. She came back to the UK. And I can't remember, she was pregnant or something. And she gives birth to Mary Shelley. She dies in childbirth. Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein. Yes. Yeah. And she was married to Percy Shelley, who had left his first wife, who ended up committing suicide. He just had, he believed that the serpent was the wise counselor. God was prohibitive. He was obsessed with the occult. And there you go.
Wow. So do you think that maybe some of this is is the enemy trying to wipe out the church by wiping out women?
He's trying to wipe out the family. So then I started to say, okay, well, were we okay for a while with the feminism? Like, did it just go side? Because we'd already gotten vote. We'd had vote, equal pay, equal work, all that kind of stuff had already happened. And so I have it in my book. In 1978, 12 women got together in Greenwich Village. And they said, why are we here today? And they said, to make a revolution. I said, what kind of revolution? They said, a cultural revolution. What kind of cultural revolution? They said, they said, how are we going to do this? They said, we're going to destroy the American family. They said that. And they said, how do we destroy the American family? By destroying the American patriarch. And they said, how do we destroy the patriarch? By taking away his power. How do we take away his power? By destroying monogamy. So it's almost like the enemy understands the power of male and female being together. And then they're like, how do we destroy monogamy? They said, by promoting. This is the National Organization of Women's Founders. By promoting promiscuity, prostitution, homosexuality, and eroticism, which would be pornography. And then they did this whole list of how they were going to infiltrate all of the school systems, all the way down to the library books with pornography and everything. And that is where we're at right now.
That's where we're at right now.
Where everything, they have with 12 women, what began with 12 women. So what I did with this book is I said, I'm going to reverse engineer this. If they could overthrow our nation by destroying the family, what might happen if we were committed to restoring it? How do we give back the man his power? How do we do that?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, we don't give the man power by neglecting our own.
Yes.
We give him back permission to be who God created him to be. And, for a long time, I've watched as the feminists told us as women, if you want to be a powerful woman, act like a man.
Right. Oh,
Behave sexually like a man.
Yeah,
absolutely. Don't trust a man. Don't, go into the workplace. Don't say I'm with your kids. That's so stupid. That's bondage. Women's liberation. See, they are trapped in the home. They needed to be liberated. So they corrupted the men. Then they liberated the women. So the men are corrupted. The women are resentful. They liberate them. And at the same time as Betty Friedan is writing about women need to be liberated, the Jesus Revolution happened. So the women were hungry for something more. She gave them anger and she gave them a target, or they could have had a spiritual rebirth and renewal. So women have been acting like men. So now it's not surprising that the men are acting like women. And so there's a reason why the feminists are largely quiet about this.
Yeah.
It's their agenda. I mean, the only person I know that is a true feminist voice is J.K. Rowling. And she's the only one that she's like, I'm not going to be quiet. I don't care what you say. This is stupid. If men can be women and women can be men, you guys can't even be, the lesbian and gay doesn't even exist anymore. What's going on? She's like, none of this works. If T works, none of it works. And she's been very outspoken.
Wow,
and
interesting. J.K. Rowling.
Oh, they tried to shut her completely down. They've like boycotted her and support Harry Potter. And they've separated all of the stars have denounced her. It's very fascinating. She wrote a magnificent letter about why gender matters. And here we are. The church is like, oh yeah. So we've got culture sexualizing what it means to be a woman, and a church silencing the voice of their daughters. The church needs to give the daughters back a voice. And culture, we need to say, I'm so sorry we pretended like femininity was a costume.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry we embraced seduction as our highest form, rather than wisdom and kindness and intuition and just all of the things that we see that we've despised age and celebrated youth and foolishness. I mean, you see that in the book of Isaiah. God's like, hey, your youth have led you astray. Where are you at? And so we're in this season now where it's the absolute bottom of the culture when gender starts being played around with. I'm a dual citizen with Italy, and I wish I was fluent in the language, but I'm not. But I am pretty fluent in the history. Yeah. And everybody knows about Nero. Everybody thinks he is the one that sacrificed Christians in the Colosseum. What the Colosseum is actually called the Flavian Amphitheater, but he didn't sacrifice them there. He sacrificed them in something called the Circus Maximus. Circus Maximus held 150,000 people. It was large enough to have chariot races in it. The Colosseum wouldn't have been big enough for that. So there was a fire in Rome, and Nero needed someone to blame. 10 of the 14 districts were destroyed. And since the Christians did not partake in the culture, he singled them out. And he said he blamed them for the fires, but he continued to kill them because, why? Because they hated humanity. What are we accused of right now if we do not go along?
We hate humanity.
That you hate. It's the same spirit. Nero's first wife was Octavia. It was a political alliance. He falsely accused her of adultery, had her executed. Second wife was his mistress, Sabina. Different accounts. One account says that he kicked her to death while she was pregnant. The other one said he just kicked her to death. His third wife was a 16-year-old boy that he castrated, dressed as a woman, and called Sabina. We've been here before.
Wow.
It's a cycle. And the thing that caused the fall of Rome was the rise of Christianity, because no matter how many times he killed them in the Circus Maximus, they kept growing. They kept growing.
Hey, everybody. I want to tell those of you that are musicians and specifically piano players about something that I've been using that really has transformed and changed a recording process for me. There is a company that I found that I've partnered with that has been lending me this incredible piano bar, is what they call it. It's from Earthworks Audio. You can find them online, earthworksaudio.com. And this is how this piano bar works. As you can see, this piano bar fits inside of a piano like so. I think it would work for an upright as well. I have a baby grand. This bar just sits right in between the piano edges, and it has these two mics. It's a very, very sensitive piano bar. It just sits right in this piano bar, and then it just has this connecting wire that comes out for all the plugins that you would need to plug into your interface. It's super easy. It's incredibly convenient. If you are an acoustic piano player, if you have a home studio and you're looking to mic an acoustic piano, Earthworks Audio is one of your best bets. Check them out online. So there is hope.
There is hope. And this is the answer, because so many people are like, what do we do?
Oh yeah. Because it does makes you feel almost like
what do we do?
Your nerves are racking.
And that's why I wrote the book.
Yeah.
Because I felt like I need to give people things. So I had the incredible privilege of interviewing a guy named Mateus, and I always mispronounce his last name, but he's in my Fight for Female podcast, and he's been on the Think Cultural Summit. And he is an expert in totalitarianism. Okay. So he's from Belgium.
Can you explain totalitarianism?
That is when government takes over every area of your life. You're not allowed to think. You're not allowed to, it's the whole control of everything, media, thought, everything.
Yeah.
It's the whole 1984 Brave New World, the kind of where we're at right now, where they're censoring everybody. Yeah. Like in UK, a man retweeted somebody's post and they arrested him, and he went to jail for 18 months. And it was just a post about, I'm tired of seeing our daughters raped and paying for all these illegal immigrants to come into our nation. And they said it was hate speech, and they put him in jail. So anyway, these are the kind of things that would be
But
under
in COVID, if you made an
totalitarianism,
anti-Semitic remark, you would lose your job, lose your everything. Oh, yeah. And now it's just
that's totalitarianism.
It's insane.
Yeah.
It's insane.
So he's from Belgium, and he had presented the Belgian government. He was a famous statistician. He'd be like their Jordan Peterson. And he came and he said, listen, I've searched all the data, and I want you guys to know herd immunity is going to be better than a lockdown. So I'm presenting this, and because he was famous and because it wasn't the direction they're going, they destroyed him. They destroyed his reputation. Everything. So, So I asked him, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? So most of my audience are moms. Most of my mom, individuals. They're not organizations. What do they do? He said, consistent, courageous conversations. See, what we're doing right now is how we fight it. And at first I was listening to him, and I thought, I can do that, but is that really going to work? And then I thought about the early church. From house to house.
Wow.
From house to house, they broke bread and they fellowshipped That's what they did, Rita. Yes, they came on, had corporate celebration, but house
Community,
to house, community. I had one of my neighbors who, she's always been kind. She said to me the other day, she said, hey, I started watching on Instagram. I was like, oh no. and I said, yeah.
That could be good or bad.
Yeah. She said, well, I'm probably a little bit more liberal than you. And I said, yeah, that's, and she says, but I'm getting troubled by things I'm seeing. And I said, yeah, there's some troubling things. And she said, could I talk with you sometime?
Oh, yeah.
See, rather than arguing on social media,
just communicate.
Just talk with people. Bounce ideas off of each other. We do not have to isolate ourselves to the Circus Maximus because we are in the Circus Maximus again. We have gladiators, we have spectators, and we have the powers that be. 150,000 people at any point could have overwhelmed Nero and all the Praetorian Guard. They could have overthrown them, but they didn't because they were content to be sitting in the stands, being happy it wasn't them. We've all heard people say, oh, I would have rescued the Jews. Oh, I would have spoken up.
Yeah.
That wasn't even 100 years ago.
No. I read Andy Andrews when he wrote the book, How Do You Kill 13 Million People or 11 million People? And he said, 5,000 people loaded on trains and 200 soldiers. The 5,000 could have overtaken those 200 soldiers at any moment, but they just got on the trains because somebody told them that's what they had to do.
And they told them, if you work, you will live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I mean, there is that sense of, you use the word in the title of this book, the fight. And I think maybe that's sometimes the harder thing to really try to figure out. How do you fight?
We fight in the spirit.
Because you do a lot in here on spiritual warfare.
Mm-hmm. We fight in the spirit. But we live in truth and kindness, truth and love. This is the whole thing. We cannot agree with lies. And here's, a lot of people look at Riley Gaines as a hero, but they look at her as a hero, like she's the one that spoke up about, hey, it's not right about women's sports, men shouldn't be in there. Mm-hmm. She was compliant at first. And then some people came alongside of her and was like, you can have a voice. But she was told, you'll never get a job, you'll be hated, you'll be blackballed, you'll never, So she believed them. It's like what you just said, get on the train. But she found her voice. And that's probably the more powerful thing to me, is that you can be a coward one day or quiet one day. Yeah. And tomorrow find your voice. You can be afraid 1 minute and the next minute do it afraid. Yeah. You can say, you know what? I'm not going to be a cis woman. I'm just going to be a woman. Yeah. And I'm not going to be hateful, but I'm not going to lie to your face. Yeah. If you tell me you're a man, I'm going to call you by your name. I'm not going to say you're a man. There's ways around it. Yeah. There's ways around it, but being quiet. I talked about in Corinthians where Paul said, if a trumpet makes an uncertain sound. People are like, are we going to war? Was that a retreat? Was that a standstill? And I know he was talking about tongues, but it is like we are not speaking a language of clarity right now. Mm-hmm. Well, people are coming in and say, okay, so what does this mean? Yeah. What does this mean? Does this mean I live my life for myself and then when I die, I go to heaven? Like, what does it mean? Or does it mean I actually died the moment I got born again and the life I live from this moment forward was purchased with a price?
I think there's so much fear. Yeah. There's so much fear in not wanting to fight. And I mean, I've got a lot of people that I know in my life that they don't say anything. They just back off and act like it doesn't exist because fighting or saying anything is too much of a risk, because there is fear there for so many people in the church to be like, don't say that you don't believe in that. I mean, from both sides, it's like, people who are more liberal that are afraid to say that they're more liberal. And then when they say that they're more liberal, they're shunned by their conservative friends. And then the opposite happens. It's like there's a lot of fear.
But then if we had conversations instead of announcements on social media, perhaps there would be a different dynamic.
I'm even seeing too that having a good conversation is few and far between. Like,
it's becoming very difficult.
We're learning. We don't know how to communicate anymore. And there has to be there has to be a breakthrough in people willing to stand up and say, yep, sorry, this has to be discussed. Sorry, this has to be. And I mean, I don't know. I think I wrestle so much internally with, Lisa, it's like when you're known to make noise, and then people dislike it because you're known to make noise. I mean, just even in
I've
the
definitely
Christian,
experienced that. Yes.
in the Christian side of music.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm the mother that's like, hey, bro, get out of sin. And then all of a sudden I know there's sin, right? And so nobody wants to talk about it because I know there's sin. And then it's PR, call the PR people, when really all I'm trying to do is be like, hey, let's not do that.
I care about you. I care about your gift. I care about one of the girls on our team.
I'm fighting for you, not against you.
I'm not trying to disqualify you. I'm actually looking for a way to rescue you. One of the girls on our team shared a story, and I don't know the story, but she said she heard a testimony where a guy had gotten newly saved, and he had, been doing recreational drugs for a while, and he didn't know better, and he did shrooms, and he'd always had a great experience, and now he's having a nightmare. He was having a demonic manifestation and feeling like demons were attacking him. And in his dream, in whatever his trip or whatever it would be called, he cried out to Jesus, and he said Jesus appeared between him and the demons, and Jesus said, "Hey, he's mine," and the demon said, "But he's eating from our table." And so he's like, whoever this person in the trip, Jesus did whatever Jesus did, and like told him heck no. But he turned to the guy and said, "Let's not do that anymore." And I think there comes a moment where Jesus is like, let's move beyond just rescue. Let's move into righteousness. Let's move into but if you don't know better, you can't do better. And once you know better, you do better. So hopefully. I mean, we don't preach a lot of the word of present your body a living sacrifice. We don't say that glorify God with your body because you were bought with a price. We say do whatever you want with your body. And again, I'm not trying to be a legalist. And I'm just saying I'm not my own. And I feel like you were talking, going right back to your conversation of choice. God doesn't care what I do with my hair. He doesn't care if I wear makeup or I don't. He's like, there's so many choices.
Yeah.
But sinning is not a good choice.
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't mean I won't forgive you. It just means there's consequences.
Yeah.
And we've confused forgiveness with a lack of consequences.
Yes.
When my children were little, they threw a ball in the house and broke a vase. I forgave them, but I made them pay for the vase. And I even had my boys say, "But you don't even like that vase." I'm like, you broke it. And there's something like if you borrow somebody's anything in your life and you break it, you replace it.
Yeah.
You don't say, "Well, it was old." You don't say, I said, you return it in better condition. It's just principles that somehow we've lost our way in. And you being a mother and saying, "I love you," and let's walk holy. For that to be a response of we got to get the PR team involved, that's tragic.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, it's a new learned language that comes with greed and power, I think. But how is, I think when I'm thinking about this, and you've written a book, what is your handing that to people, and especially to women?
I'm getting such great responses from it. I think I have 70 5-star reviews. People saying, "This is what I needed. Okay. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do." Well, and if you look in the back of the book, I think I have for the first time 6 pages of footnotes. Yeah. I have never had to research so much. So because I've heard the arguments, and and again, go to conservative news. I'll tell you what's wrong. Go to the progressive. They'll encourage you. You're your own God. You do what you want. But if you want truth, you have to go to the Word. And God creates us for His glory, not our own glory, and not for our own satisfaction, And so again, I know that's the antithesis of what our world is preaching right now, but that is the gospel of Jesus Christ. And when I got saved, I was told that God had a plan for my life, and I was no longer my own. I was told I died in that moment. And I think a lot of times, Rita, maybe we're not doing a good job telling people that they've settled the issue of death, that they've already died. So why are they afraid?
Yeah.
There's they're just walking into eternity.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. So my hope was, my hope wasn't this was going to be a New York Times or this was going to be, my hope was to give young people a pathway home.
Yeah.
An exposing of a dragon that has lied and hates women. He's not partnering with women for freedom or beauty or strength. He's distorting everything. And parents, giving them back permission to be parents.
Yeah.
Giving them insight to what is going on spiritually. I used to always say, the devil's running full strength. He's not getting any stronger. And yes, that's right. But the truth is, we have opened up this nation and our homes through entertainment and certain music and things that we have done as a nation that have been wicked, that have allowed more demonic influence in our nation than we've ever had before. So,
well,
sin in leaders. So,
do you feel like, do you feel or sense that because of the times that we're in, and I pray for this a lot, but that we will be seeing more miraculous things because it's probably going to take a miracle to get out of this?
Yes, I do. I do believe. I feel like darkness always punctuates light.
Yeah,
and it's kind of funny. Whenever I'm writing, I always read the Chronicles of Narnia, so I don't have to worry about plagiarizing anything.
Yeah.
But there's just such a clarity right now of darkness and light.
Yeah.
I was talking with somebody who's very involved in politics, and they said there was a time period where you could say, this whole world is nuanced. She's like, it's not there anymore. She said, it's like here or here. She's like, it's this or that.
Yeah.
And I'm not even getting into politics. It's just what is being said.
Yep.
And lies and truth. And
it's
just
insane.
Yes. And, and it's just right now, it is going to take the elect returning to God for God to heal our land. It is not about election returns.
Yeah.
It is going to be elect returning. I mean, it is divisive, divided.
Yeah.
Everything that the enemy loves, because when we are this divided, and I opened up the book with the dream of a dragon, and I closed up with the understanding that corporately we have to fight, that this is our due. This, we can start with the dream, but there has to always be a due at the end of it.
Yeah.
But when I was looking at this, I started the book. I mean, and you mentioned this, angry, like why is no? But I ended up heartbroken because of the loss and the deception, and we who know truth being quiet is just not an option right now.
Yeah, we who know truth should not be quiet. Quietness is not an option right now.
It's not.
That's so good.
It's not.
That is so good. One of the last questions I think I'd ask you is on the musical side, which you may not ever be asked this before, but as someone who has a lot of wisdom in what you're writing about and what you're seeing and sensing, what would you like, or what would you feel you would like to see the church singing? What kind of songs should we be singing?
Yeah.
To help combat and fight?
I mean, I think we need to sing people into a place of courageous surrender.
Yeah.
I just think we have to sing courage back into people's lives.
Yeah.
And how we get courage back is not us being strong.
Yeah.
It's about him. That, I wasn't raised Christians, but there were like onward Christian soldiers.
Yeah.
I mean, like those kind of things where God is glorified and we are aware that we are part of a very long story where we are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses that are saying to us, run well. It's worth it. It's worth it. I mean, when you go through Hebrews 11, you hear these stories, and God says, of whom the world was not worthy. Can you imagine? I mean, God is saying these people who, even though they were humans,
Yeah.
they lived in a way where they saw the promise of God in the distance and they waved their greeting. And they lived in the outer fringes and the barren desert wastelands. And we are gathering in air-conditioned, magnificent buildings. And I'm not against those things.
Yeah.
But we have so much. But we have turned into spectators instead of participants with the promises of God. And I think we just need to switch those places.
Yeah.
And we need to sing about the awe and the fear of God. We need to sing about the love of God, but not have ourselves as the focus all the time.
That's good. That's actually really good. That's so good. Well, if you haven't gotten Lisa's book, The Fight for Female, you can get that just about anywhere.
Amazon's probably the best because it
Amazon's
ships
the
for
best.
free.